All right. Peace and love, everybody, and welcome back for another Sunday Hope and Healing session. Peace and love. It's interesting. Those almost seem like novel ideas today, don't they? Anyway, we're back for another Sunday Hope and Healing session and endeavoring to bring greater levels of peace, greater levels of well-being, greater levels of hope, and overall support for our decision to live life well and to enter into a sustainable state of supreme satisfaction. I'm Royce Fletcher Thomason, and it's my pleasure to be here with you today, as it is every Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. And so our topic for today is actually releasing resentment. Is resentment anything that you deal with? Resentment, ooh, boy. I refer to this as a sneaky stealer of life. You know, there is a very strong correlation actually between resentment and cancer. A lot of people don't necessarily realize that, but there's a very strong correlation between those two. And I really feel compelled to address this, in part because it keeps being placed in my awareness of people who are dealing with cancer, as well as having had to address internal resentment of my own, working through that process, recognizing that there was something going on in me and needing to address that within myself. And so I referred to this once again as, let me pull it back up again, as a sneaky stealer of life. Resentment is something that takes place on the inside of you. It could be the case that nobody else is aware of it, but it's something that's being harbored on the inside and actually doing internal damage. And we might not actually behave consciously or actively towards people in a way that suggests that we're resenting them. But those might be some secret things that we have hidden away within ourselves, some private thoughts that we might have regarding people or circumstances, some private thoughts that we have that we might not necessarily feel comfortable sharing with other people, right? But it nonetheless has a way of causing some problems inside of us, not only emotionally, but perhaps even more significantly, manifesting in states of dis-ease in the body temple. Okay. All right. And so what resentment really is it's a way that we hold on to issues that we are in our mind possibly wanting to punish someone for, but we end up actually subconsciously punishing ourselves. Okay. All right. I don't know if anybody out here can directly relate to this, if I'm reading anybody's email or not. But I do feel like this is an important thing for us to address today. Like I said earlier, there's a very strong correlation between resentment and cancer. Okay. Now I know that there are certain environmental toxins, things that are referred to as carcinogens, that can certainly impact cellular function. And I'll say this again, I've said it before on Sunday Hope and Healing sessions, but essentially what cancer is it is a conglomeration of rogue cells. The way that this body was awesomely and wonderfully designed by God, the source of life itself, is for it to be self-regenerating, for it to repair when something goes wrong. And it's a collective of a whole bunch of different cells, billions upon trillions of cells. That's what your body is. It's a collection of cells. And each cell has its own function, its own job, its own responsibility, but all of them, listen to me now, every cell of your body is designed to do its own individual job, but all for the good of the whole body, the body as a whole. Okay? Are you hearing me today? Greetings, Curly Conscious King, and everybody else who's in the space with us today. Every cell of your body is divinely designed to support the good of the whole. You can think of all members of creation, I'm just going to keep it to human beings right now. You can think of all human beings as individual cells that are divinely designed to support the greater good of the whole body, the body of humanity. And what happens is that some cells, kind of like cancer in the body, ends up going rogue. And instead of choosing to support the greater good of the body, it actually does things that it, in its misguided thinking, will serve itself, giving total disregard to how it impacts the body as a whole. And not only does it do that, but it then recruits other cells through its own fear-based tactics, recruits other cells to join in this rogue undertaking to actually cut itself off from that which would actually support the good of the whole, the good of the whole. And it eats away at the fabric of life itself, okay? And that is the case whether we're talking about mega conglomerate corporations that that put things that aren't healthy in the food to keep us addicted to it, or whether it is people who just take advantage of other people because of how it's going to impact them personally without any regard of how it will impact anyone else. Okay, so that in and of itself is a cancerous mindset, it's cancerous thinking, and it's what actually leads to the creation of products in the physical realm that end up becoming carcinogenic. And then we, whether it is a form of internal resistance of our subconscious mind being upset with the system, or whether we are upset with any particular individual, and then we don't necessarily feel like we can be empowered to handle it in a way that that would follow like established channels. Like we might feel like there's no hope to do it that way. And so we end up having this internal thing going on where we're just resentful. We've resigned ourselves to a degree, a state of powerlessness, but at the same time, using the power of our consciousness in a way that isn't actually productive to us in the long run, because that resentment ends up creating stagnation when the natural starting to say the natural flow of things, which would have actually been the perfect thing to say. The natural order of things is such that energy is designed to move. Energy is designed to flow. Life is designed to flow. Okay. When Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus the Christ, said, I came that you might have life, and that more abundantly, you know, a big part of what he was talking about is allowing us to have a sense of peace and a sense of well-being, to exist in a state of physical homeostasis, as well as be in a state of spiritual alignment. Because the truth of the matter is that one does impact the other, or one certainly can influence and impact the other. But I'm not going to do too much talking about this today. It's 10 minutes after the hour already. I want to go ahead and get into the healing. I want to get into the healing. And whether you're a person who's dealing with the physical dis-ease of cancer, whether you've experienced a diagnosis or prognosis, or whether you are a person who just recognizes that there's some stuff that you're dealing with inside, or maybe you're not even dealing with inside, but there's some stuff going on inside of you that you want to resolve because you want to dwell in a state of greater peace. Perhaps there's somebody who did something that you don't agree with, and you want things to flow in your life in a way that you feel empowered, but you may feel like some degree of power is cut off from you. Or you might be a person who somebody didn't behave the way that you wanted them to behave, or behaved in a way that was counter to how you would have wanted them to behave. And you're wanting to bring peace into the place where you've been holding on to that negative, stagnated, blocked energy. Whether any of these things are the case or not, you are certainly more than welcome to participate in and partake of this healing. I'm going to start with a prayer. And at the designated time, I want you to state your name, or state the name of someone that you care about, who you feel like this would be beneficial to. You can either state it out loud or you can state it silently. But we're going to start with a prayer, and then I'm going to do some things. You won't even be able to tell what it is I'm doing, but I'm going to do some things to help release some energy, to help create some healing. So God, I know you to be a healer. I know you to be a healer. And through the union that we share, through the power of your pure love, I'm calling forth and demonstrating you as a healer on the behalf of everyone who is stating their name, or whose name is being stated right now, either out loud or silently. For the purpose of neutralizing the root cause and all cumulative effects of resentment, the root cause of any and every iota of resentment, as well as the cumulative effects of that resentment, from the point of the causal root in the entire energy field, in every cell of our bodies, in every strand of our DNA, and transmuting it into and replacing it with a sense of divine alignment, with a sense of peace and well-being, with a sense of authentic empowerment that is used constructively to add value to our lives and to that of others. And I bear witness to our wholeness on this date and in this time and space called now. Thank you. Thank you, God, for this gift of your divine love. It is done. It is done. It is done. All right. So let us get into, and feel free, if you feel so inclined, if there's something that you've personally struggled with as far as any resentment is concerned, to drop it in the comments. There may be someone who can relate to it, and you might give them the courage to own it and to welcome love into the space, welcome healing into that space. Okay. All right. So one of the things I want to get into is I'm going to say it as a fearful response to challenge those who we perceive have power over us. Okay. Like, we may not feel comfortable or feel like we're in a position to outright act in a way that expresses our displeasure in a socially acceptable way. Or we might not feel like we are able to do anything to change whether we're approaching it in a socially acceptable way or not. Okay. And so to bring into that space the light of the presence of God's power and love. There are places where we feel disempowered, to bring in the power and the presence of God and God's love into that space. Now, one of the things that happens when we feel disempowered is we try to find ways to tap into some sense of power. If you haven't seen it already, I highly encourage you to check out last week's Sunday Hope and Healing session. Okay, dealing with the revelation that I had that can help to shift our paradigm. Right, so let's look at our subconscious desire to punish those who we believe need to be punished. Okay. That we aren't actually in a place to be able to exact the punishment upon them. Okay. And let's replace that. Let's replace that with a trust that it is all being handled in the way that it needs to be handled. That there's nothing that God doesn't know and there's nothing that God doesn't see. You'll be provided for and redeemed. And that God is restoring the years that the locusts have eaten. Okay. When I look at anger internalized, so we want to clear that anger that we've internalized and direct it inwardly. You see, at the core, resentment, holding on to resentment is an evidence of a place where we don't feel like we are completely worthy and deserving of love. Because resentment is unworthy of us. And resentment and love don't align. Okay. It's a scientific law that two different things cannot occupy the same place at the same time. And so where resentment is, it's squeezing out place for love. Where resentment is, it's squeezing out place for joy. Where resentment is, it's squeezing out place for love and for well-being and for wholeness. Okay. All right. So we can either choose to hold on to resentment or we can choose to fully love ourselves. I'll let that breathe for a minute. But before I do, I'm going to say it one more time. We can either choose to hold on to resentment or we can choose to fully love ourselves. Okay. All right. So I want to strengthen us to be able to love ourselves. Why don't we fully love ourselves? Why do we hold back from fully loving ourselves? We hold back from fully loving ourselves because sometimes, one of the reasons is because sometimes those who we believe love us or were supposed to love us didn't necessarily love us in the way that we needed them to. Whether that's caregivers, and frequently the case, those who were the ones taking care of us, raising us, our parents. And even if your parent or parents didn't raise you, oh boy, there can be a whole lot of subconscious messaging that we take in from that. Okay. And then we cause ourselves to believe certain things about ourselves that aren't true. Like we weren't good enough or things like that. It is understandable that we could come to those conclusions. And it's really our inner child that came to those conclusions. And as we've aged through life, that inner child still may need to be and feel resolved. Okay. We can be 62, 72 years old and still experience the wounds of the inner child. So in a lot of cases, it's that inner child that needs to be resolved, the inner child that needs to be restored. There are prisons full of people who have experienced wounding of their inner child and hadn't figured out a healthy way to bring reconciliation, to bring restoration to that wounded inner child. Okay. Right. So I want to look at fear. Fear of not being able to. A lot of times people have fear of change, but there can also be a fear of not being able to change. It could be a fear of us not being able to change. It could be a fear of not being able to change a situation. Okay. And so as it relates to the fear of not being able to change the situation, I want to strengthen us to be able to have the serenity to accept the things that we can't change. Okay. To bring serenity in the place where we've held on to resentment or any other issues about things that we have felt powerless to change ourselves, or things that we have tried to control that are actually outside of our control, that can only breed varying degrees of frustration. And sometimes if we get the impression that our controlling behaviors can actually make us feel better and help us to feel safe and at peace, then we end up engaging in that activity even more. So I want to strengthen us to be able to dwell in a state of spiritual and emotional intelligence and spiritual and emotional maturity to release our temptation and proclivity to try to control things, and to increase our ability to flow in life, to really flow in life, and to flow through whatever life presents itself with. Okay. I know of a lady who actually ended up having cervical cancer. And she ended up choosing to perceive that cancer, to see what the gift in it was. And she said that she started seeing it as an angel of light, that she started seeing it as an angel of light. Greetings to you, my brother. Yes, whether it's something that we consider to be good, or something that we consider to be bad, to be able to dwell in a state of flow in the midst of it. Okay. To be able to flow with whatever it is that's going on, instead of just resisting it and fighting against it. You know, there are a lot of things that we as humans like fight against, and we get caught up in the energy of what it is that we're against. And instead, we do ourselves a lot better to fight for what it is that we're for, rather than fighting against what we're against, fighting for what we're for. Okay. And I'll even put that differently, utilize our energy to support us moving in the direction that we ultimately want to go. Now, yes, there's some things that happen in life that take us in a direction different from where it is that we want to go. Sometimes there's some things that hit in life. It could be a breakup, a divorce. It could be a health diagnosis. It could be a financial challenge that arises. It could be many different things, right? It could be the loss of a job. It could be the struggles that a child is facing, right? It could be all kinds of different things that could be happening. It could be what is going on in the world as a whole, right? And while those things might, uh, endeavor to move us in a direction that is very different than where it is that we want to be, I think about if a person is, I'm in Florida, and though I'm in Florida, I admit that I don't spend a lot of time on the beach. And when I do, I definitely don't go way out into the water. But I do know that there are some people who do like to do that. And I also know that there are situations where there's a current that can hit, that a person can get caught in a certain type of current where no matter how hard they try, they won't be able to make it back to shore. They won't be able to make it back to shore. And so they're actually fighting against the current, trying to make it back to shore, but the current is stronger than their swimming ability. Okay. And so what I've come to learn that the proper thing to do in that situation isn't to fight against the current. It's to swim actually parallel to the shore until you get to a point where that current isn't fighting against you in the same way that it was. Do you hear me? Rather than, and this is something that I saw as a survival technique that I actually saw. There are certain places in the water where the water that's coming back, going back into the ocean, in this case, the ocean, I'm saying the ocean because I live in Florida, going back into the ocean is too strong for a person to be able to swim back against it. Okay. And a lot of people have experienced loss of life trying to swim back against the current. And I forget what it is that they call it. I hadn't planned on using this illustration at the time that I determined what it was that we'd be focusing on for today's Sunday Hope and Healing session. But there is a certain name for this particular area where the current is just too strong and a person would never be able to swim back to shore against that current. And so the appropriate way to actually be able to go forth in an empowered way is, rather than swimming against that current that's too powerful to swim against, to swim parallel to where it is that you're wanting to go. Not necessarily swimming directly to where you want to go, but swimming parallel to where it is that you want to go. And then finding a place where that current isn't so strong fighting against you. And then at that point, to swim towards where it is that you're ultimately wanting to go, in this particular case, the shore. And that's a strategy that I think that can work well with us when we're facing things like a government that's making choices that we don't think that should be being made, or situations where a spouse or a beloved is doing some things that we are not in agreement with, or any other situation that we would like to be able to have a say-so in, but things are going in a way that's different than how it is that we're able to actually control. So rather than fighting against the current, to be able to find our groove, to dwell in that flow, even in the midst of things not unfolding in the way that we'd like for them to be able to navigate our way back to where it is that we ultimately want to be. Okay. All right. So I want to strengthen us to be able to, and that, by the way, does require a certain degree of faith, a certain degree of trust. want to strengthen us to be able to have the trust and to be able to have the faith, to be able to do what seems counterintuitive. Scripture says that there is a way that seems right to a person, but that way will end up leading to death for them. There are a lot of things that we think in our own ego mind. There are all kind of thoughts that go on in our mind that actually aren't leading us to where it is that we ultimately want to end up. A lot of times we make decisions based on our own limited awareness, and we try to do things in our own strength rather than tapping in to a greater strength, a greater power. Okay. All right. And so I want to strengthen us to be able to want to support us in terms of opening up our hearts and our minds to flow in the power of God towards healing, in a direction of healing and well-being. Okay. See, the cancerous cell has its idea of what power is, but it's very misguided in that. And we can be powerful in what it is that we choose. In choosing love, in choosing healing, in choosing peace, in choosing forgiveness. Now, that's a power. It takes some power to be able to choose forgiveness for the things that would seem unforgivable. Right? We've all had situations and times where people did something, or made choices that impacted us in a way that we didn't like. Okay, so I want to strengthen us to be able to give eviction notices to the negative thoughts that are living rent-free in our mind. Okay. Again, two things cannot occupy the same place at the same time. And so all of these negative thoughts that we're harboring, peaceful thoughts can't dwell there at the same time. Okay. Who do you want to give residence to in the mansions of your mind? Right? I want to empower us to be aware that we can actually choose what it is that we focus on. Strengthen us to be able to choose what it is that we focus on. Okay. All right, now let's focus on, let's strengthen us to be able to focus on not just healing, but focus on what's on the other side of the healing. What's on the other side of the healing? On the other side of healing is the peace. What's on the other side of the healing is the wholeness. Let's strengthen us to be able to see that, believe it, imagine it, and turn that imagination into a reality. All right. You know, in another way, resentment can also be a really poor attempt at retaliation. But it can actually be a learned thing. Okay. Greetings, Catcher. Yeah. So let's address that spiritual oppression, where we might feel spiritually oppressed Is another human being oppressing us? No. Might we be unwittingly participating in our own spiritual oppression? Yes. Let's strengthen us. Once upon a time, I am a minister, and I would find that when people found out that I was a minister, then they tried to put on their best behavior and tell me how good and how righteous they were. And I didn't need people to do that because it's not my job to be judging people anyway. But it would also not create a space where genuine compassion and understanding could really be present and engaged, right? And so I started using the term spiritual abolitionist. This is 20 years ago, 20 something years ago, almost 30 years ago now. Wow, this year marks 30th year that I've been in ministry. Well, I want to look at our subconscious belief that there isn't anything that we can do about our own sense of oppression, whether that is societal oppression, relational oppression, spiritual oppression, or physical oppression. I want to strengthen us all to vibrate with the frequency of freedom, of true, authentic freedom. Some refer to it as liberation. Okay. You know what liberation is also a synonym of? We don't always think of it this way, but in a spiritual sense, you know what liberation is a synonym of? Enlightenment. The master said, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you what? Free. Okay. But it helps to come into that awareness of a greater truth. Okay. So it strengthens us to be able to tap into a greater truth, greater than what everybody else is choosing to tap into. It is not in the interest of the world, does not seek to help you become enlightened, because you can't be controlled if you're enlightened. Okay. And so you have to be able to make the decision on your own that that's where it is that you want to be. And there was a point in my own life where I had to really get serious about my desire to know the true truth, the truth beyond what's being put out there, the truth beyond what everybody else is tapping into. And it caused me to be able to ultimately develop this methodology referred to as transcending the matrix. And you know what else it did? It caused me to be honest with me, about what secret thoughts and fears and negative emotions I had going on within me, to be truly authentic, to face the things within me that didn't look so good, and to be able to find peace within my own beingness. That's part of liberation. You know what another synonym is for liberation? Another synonym is for enlightenment, salvation. But we generally think, at least Christians generally think of salvation as something that somebody else does. And yet Jesus himself said that you've got to work out your own salvation. right? It's a process for us to be able to choose whether we're going to be free or not. So I want to strengthen us in terms of strengthening our resolve to truly be free. To truly be free. Releasing the blame of others who've stood between us and our freedom. Release anger and animosity toward those who stood in the way of our ancestors' freedom. And though their actions and behaviors might not have been right, we don't have to allow them to have power over us by holding on to that negative energy. And so we can release it. Invite the light of God's love and God's peace into the place where we've held on to that stuff. Because two things cannot occupy the same place at the same time. What is it that you want to have on the inside of you? What is it that you want to have occupying your thoughts? I hear you. I had to release to get to my peaceful place. Yes. All right. And so want to look at our subconscious desire to prove ourselves right. There's nothing wrong with being right. The only problem is that when you're insisting on being right when you're not. Okay. There's a difference between being right and actually getting it right. Okay. So let's strengthen our commitment to actually getting it right. You know, the person who thinks they know everything can't learn anything. And the person who maintains that they're right relinquishes their opportunity to get it right because they can't correct where it is that they've been wrong. Have you seen anybody like that before? Who can never admit that they're wrong? Who would dig their heels in when it's pointed out in obvious ways that they're wrong? I hear you, brother. Well, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. Okay. And if you're thinking about somebody, if you're thinking about somebody else who can never admit that they're wrong, I want to invite you to just take a peek in the mirror for a moment also and look at what ways in which you might not be open to being shown a better way. Okay. Let's strengthen us to be able to find new ways to be creative. We can often be creative about how we dig our heels in. But let's actually strengthen us to be creative about finding ways to let more of the light of God's love in. Let's be creative in finding more ways to let more of the light of God's love. The light of God's love is always available. God is everywhere equally present. There's no spot where God is not. Okay. Save our own thought processes sometimes. We can't run away from God except in our own minds. Okay. And we can close off aspects of our consciousness from acknowledging the presence of God in those places. And in that context, the way that we end up experiencing it is as a sense of abandonment from God, or a sense of closing ourselves off from God. And so instead, let's welcome in the light of God's love into those places. Because all sickness, all dis-ease is a function of a lack of light. Darkness isn't really a thing unto itself, it's just the absence of light. And by bringing in the light, bringing in that pure love and divine light, the darkness automatically disappears. Okay. And healing happens. Okay. It happens on some level, physical or otherwise. And so it want to strengthen us to openness, to complete openness to God, to be complete openness to God's light, to complete openness to God's love. All right. Now, what part of us is resistant to that? The part of the ego, or the part of us that wants to edge God out. The part of us that feels a need to continue to maintain that sense of separate self. Okay. The part of us that is afraid, deeply afraid. Okay. Want to replace that fear with confidence. Replace that fear with confidence. Confidence in the security of your future. Confidence in God's ability to reach you where you're most needing to be reached. And confidence in yourself to welcome in the light of God's love in the places where you're most needing it. Okay. All right. Okay. And so now let's look at any resentment. And I know I made reference, a short ancestral reference earlier. But let's look at actually resolving, resentment that's been passed down from one generation to another. Okay. And sending that pure love and divine light back 37 generations before us. All through those generations, all through that, all through the bloodline, and not just our biological bloodline, but those who we've considered our teachers, those who have socialized us, those who impacted our thinking process. And the ages gone by. We want to include them in this healing also. And also project that healing into the future for future generations. Okay. All right. Now, I want to invite space for us to deeply and completely forgive ourselves for choices that we made in the past. Deeply and completely forgive ourselves for not forgiving ourselves earlier. deeply and completely forgive ourselves for the time that we allowed to go by without doing what we have the wherewithal to do now, but didn't have the wherewithal to do then. Want to strengthen us to deeply and completely love and accept ourselves exactly as we are, even as we continue to endeavor to be the best version of ourselves that we can possibly be. And I'm going to invite us now to call forth the light of God's radiant love to pour in to our minds, into our hearts, into our souls, and into every cell of our body. Allowing ourselves to release the barriers to love. Doesn't mean that we let everybody into the most intimate areas of our lives. Not everybody will handle that responsibly. But God most certainly knows how to and does. And so releasing all the resentment, but also all the resistance to God's loving presence operating inside of us. Releasing all the shame, inviting the light of God's love into the place where we've held on to shame. And whatever activities or inactivity has led to those feelings and experiences of shame. There's no secret that we can actually keep from God. We can pretend that God doesn't know, but we can't actually keep any secrets from God. And it's God's good pleasure for us to fully welcome in that pure love and divine light, unconditional love that isn't based on us meeting any particular mark and isn't limited by us failing to do so. Strengthen us to be able to open ourselves to receive the fullness of God's pure love and divine light in a way that can truly transform our lives from the inside out. And to feel comfortable with this pure love and divine light. For it to feel perfectly natural for us to dwell in this pure love and divine light, and for this pure love and divine light of God to dwell fully in us. God, thank you so much for the healing that you've allowed to go forth today. Thank you for taking the aspects in our consciousness that we're not as receptive to you and to your love and to your grace and to your peace and to our own healing, and allowing those things to be made manifest within our hearts, minds, and souls more fully. Thank you for any physical healing that's also taken place as a result of this spiritual healing. And thank you for all of the ways that you are consciously, continuously, constantly and continuously seeking to shower us with goodness and bless us. For this we give great thanks. And we affirm it is done, it is done, it is done. All right, God bless you, beloved. It's been my pleasure to be here with you again today, as it always is. We've got, and it's been scrolling across the bottom of your screen. It's hard to tell exactly what it is that's happening during these Sunday open healing sessions. I've had somebody who's actually end up doing the Transcending the Matrix training that had participated in some of these Sunday open healing sessions that admitted, I had no clue what you were doing, and it didn't look like you were doing anything. The truth of the matter is that there are profound things that are taking place. And that person is actually able to do has been doing some profound things on the behalf of several other people, really making huge differences in their lives in the way of healing. And if you're interested in learning to be an active participant in your healing as well as the healing of others, we do have a Transcending the Matrix class coming up, class/initiation coming up, where you'll be able to access that profound healing power, where you'll learn how to tap in to the healing power that is actually innate within us, that we just need to gain access to. We've got a class coming up via Zoom, class/initiation coming up via Zoom in just a few weeks on the weekend of April 10th through 12th. Again, it's Zoom, so it doesn't matter where it is that you are in the world. We'll be happy to share this with you. If you're interested, reach out to me on Instagram at Transcending the Matrix, or Royce Fletcher Thomason, or at Royce Fletcher Thomason on Facebook. Anyway, that closes us out for today. And as we continue to endeavor to enter into that sustainable state of supreme satisfaction, until we meet again, I bid you adieu with peace and love. And if nobody's told you this today, let me tell you that I love you, and you are worthy of love. You're worthy of goodness. You're worthy of being showered in an abundance of bright blessings. Catch you next time.